Hey there. After I fully retired about 2 years ago, I took to watching YouTube videos of people who had sold everything that they owned, bought a fixer-up sailboat, fixed it up, sailed around the world to all these cool locations. To me, that seemed like a fantastic idea, and I was all in. I floated it by the boss, we had some discussions, and we figured that it probably wasn't a good time with the world being the way it is to liquidate all our assets and be out in the wind when it all goes down. And my friend, it's gonna go down, but that's another video. So I started asking myself, what can I do in that same spirit of adventure, of putting a boat together and going out and having some adventures on some of my local lakes. And a friend of mine had gifted me an aluminum boat that was gutted, and I had always been interested in solar technology. I think it's totally awesome, the things you can do with it. So to me, the answer was clear. I would build my own solar power boat, take it on some adventures, and by golly, I did it. I got a wild hair to build my own solar powered boat. Hey fellow solar boat nerds, thanks for checking out my project. My hope in creating this channel is to share my adventures in learning to construct a solar powered boat and to document its performance while on multi-day camping adventures. I also hope to learn from and share experience with other solar boat nerds out there in the social network community. I call this a DIY project because there is nothing I did here that I didn't learn on YouTube, and I used only parts that are easily found on the internet. In the end, the project is simply a solar panel connected to a battery, connected to a trolling motor on a boat. Like most DIY projects, this is a budget project, so the cost of the parts was a concern for me, especially for the first version. I chose relatively inexpensive components to create my proof of concept boat, to make sure everything worked together, and to get some baseline performance measures. I did, however, use all new parts as I planned to take the boat on some long trips and wanted to minimize my chances of being stranded. As an example, I started with a new 12-volt trolling motor and some new, relatively inexpensive lead-acid batteries. I wanted to see firsthand if spending X amount of dollars would equate to increased speed and efficiency. I suspect it will, but how much is the question. The process has been a lot of fun. I'm calling my channel the Solar Boat Adventures obviously because of what I hope to do with the boat, but also in recognition that half of the adventure, half the fun is the learning. Learning about floor framing and pour foam, learning about wiring lights and such, learning about solar power, learning how to weld, and actually learn how to make videos. Whew. The list goes on.
Number one station. This is a story about love. A love story.
So I started this project with a 1970s Starcraft Mariner 21 that was gifted to me. And I wouldn't classify it as a restoration, as I had no intention of returning it to its original form. I'll call it more of an experimental custom build-up, because everything I did was, for me, the first time, and experimental. But one thing I kept in mind as I went through the build was that I knew I wanted to maximize my deck space for camping, swimming, fishing, and generally hanging out. And again, I didn't document the build as I did it step by step because I really didn't feel like I had anything to offer from a how-to perspective. I was just learning as I went. I will, however, give you a high-level walkthrough of what I did and kind of how I felt it turned out. And I replaced my transom by using a cardboard template to get the shape of the transom right. I used 3/4 inch marine grade plywood, doubled to make an 1.5 inch thick transom. I glued it, screwed it, and covered it with a coat of resin. On the outside, I had lots of bolt holes from before, lots of screw holes from other things that had been on there, and so I decided to cover that with a sheet of 1/8 inch aluminum sheeting. I painted the inside and the outside with Rust-Oleum. The outside I used two coats of, for the bare metal I used 2 coats of Rust-Oleum bare metal primer in white, and on the outside I used 2 coats minimum of Rust-Oleum topside gloss white, and I just ended up rolling it with a sponge roller. It turned out pretty good. I'm pretty happy with it. The inside I rolled again with a sponge roller with Rust-Oleum. It was a gloss, more of a general purpose paint. It was actually the same paint that I used for the floorboards. It's oil based and it is kind of a gloss gray. On the subfloor, I built up the structure a bit with 1 inch angle aluminum cut and notched every other stringer. For flotation, I put foam board 2 inch thick in the V section to facilitate drainage, and on the sides I used pour foam to help me with my floor structure. It turned out pretty good. I was happy with it. I covered it with 1/2 inch plywood, cut out by template, 2 coats of the Rust-Oleum oil-based paint. The casting deck and rear swim deck I framed with 2x4s ripped in half, covered them with 2 coats of the oil-based paint. For the horizontals on that, for the verticals it was the wood for the structure, and for the horizontals I used aluminum just to experiment. I didn't really have a plan, and I saw a lot of aluminum framing. Turned out good. I covered it with the same 1/2 inch plywood, covered in 2 coats of oil-based paint. The carpet was the Lowe's cheap stuff, glued and stapled with stainless steel. I made the compartments, aluminum hinges. Turned out okay. I wanted to do a center console, but I couldn't figure out how to make the cable for the steering column make all the sharp turns, so I decided to put it on the side, which actually helped out with the flow of wires and such. And again, I just framed that with a 2x4 ripped and used the 1/2 inch plywood, built it to what I thought was good for me. I mean, as far as height, I could steer while standing. And the instrument panel, I just basically laid out all my instruments on a table and kind of eyeballed, what size I wanted. The wiring I did from scratch. There was nothing on the boat. I basically have a 12-volt battery that runs to a fuse box, and from there it goes to the switches where I've got lights, I've got stereo, my nav lights, or floodlights, courtesy lights. There's a bilge pump. That was all done with marine grade wire. I went to Michael Lopez. He had some great videos on that. I didn't know anything about wiring, but I'm pretty happy with the way it turned out. I still have some wire management to do, but turned out okay. As far as the solar components go, I'll get into that in my next video. So there you have it. When I was doing the build, I was worried about things, and like I said, a lot of butt scratching and planning, but it comes to a point where you just got to go for it and live with the results. I have to say, though, I'm pretty happy with the way it turned out. Time's going to tell. I'm sure that I'll be making some modifications in the future. And again, this was a high-level view. I just wanted to get this video out and kind of show you what was going on, maybe get some feedback. But if you have some questions about what I did specifically, maybe I'll do more in-depth videos on some of the things. But yeah, I'd like to hear what you have to say. I'd like to see your project. And check back with my next video. I'm going to get into the weeds about my solar generation, my charging, the fun stuff, the wiring and the propulsion. And it's probably what you're here for. I just kind of wanted to give you a little background on the boat build itself. So check back. Please reach out. Let me know what you think, and I'll see you on the next video. Thanks.
Live and let others live, and your place may be locked up upon this land.